Chapter 55 of the Constitution of Athens by Aristotle. Chapter 55. All the foregoing magistrates are elected by lot, and their duties are those which have been stated. To pass on to the 9 archons, as they are called, the manner of their appointment from the earliest times has been described already. At the present day, 6 thesmothetae are elected by lot, together with their clerk, and in addition to these, an archon, a king, and a polemarch. 1 is elected from each tribe. They are examined first of all by the council of 500, with the exception of the clerk. The latter is examined only in the law court, like other magistrates, for all magistrates, whether elected by lot or by open vote, are examined before entering on their offices. But the 9 archons are examined both in the council and again in the law court. Formerly, no one could hold the office if the council rejected him, but now there is an appeal to the law court, which is the final authority in the matter of the examination. When they are examined, they are asked, first, "Who is your father, and of what deme? Who is your father's father? Who is your mother? Who is your mother's father, and of what deme?" Then the candidate is asked whether he possesses an ancestral Apollo and a household Zeus, and where their sanctuaries are. Next, if he possesses a family tomb, and where. Then, if he treats his parents well, and pays his taxes, and has served on the required military expeditions. When the examiner has put these questions, he proceeds, "Call the witnesses to these facts." And when the candidate has produced his witnesses, he next asks, "Does anyone wish to make any accusation against this man?" If an accuser appears, he gives the parties an opportunity of making their accusation and defense, and then puts it to the council to pass the candidate or not, and to the law court to give the final vote. If no one wishes to make an accusation, he proceeds at once to the vote. Formerly, a single individual gave the vote, but now all the members are obliged to vote on the candidates, so that if any unprincipled candidate has managed to get rid of his accusers, it may still be possible for him to be disqualified before the law court. When the examination has been thus completed, they proceed to the stone on which are the pieces of the victims, and on which the arbitrators take oath before declaring their decisions, and witnesses swear to their testimony. On this stone the archons stand, and swear to execute their office uprightly, and according to the laws, and not to receive presents in respect of the performance of their duties, or, if they do, to dedicate a golden statue. When they have taken this oath, they proceed to the Acropolis, and there they repeat it. After this, they enter upon their office. Chapter 56. The archon, the king, and the polemarch have each 2 assessors nominated by themselves. These officers are examined in the law court before they begin to act, and give in accounts on each occasion of their acting. As soon as the archon enters office, he begins by issuing a proclamation that whatever anyone possessed before he entered into office, that he shall possess and hold until the end of his term. Next, he assigns choregi to the tragic poets, choosing 3 of the richest persons out of the whole body of Athenians. Formerly, he used also to assign 5 choregi to the comic poets, but now the tribes provide the choregi for this purpose. Then he receives the choregi who have been appointed by the tribes for the men's and boys' choruses, and the comic poets at the Dionysia, and for the men's and boys' choruses at the Thargelia. At the Dionysia there is a chorus for each tribe, but at the Thargelia 1 between 2 tribes, each tribe bearing its share in providing it. He transacts the exchanges of properties, and reports any excuses that are tendered. If any one says that he has already borne this burden, or that he is exempt because he has borne a similar burden, and the period of his exemption has not yet expired, or that he is not of the required age, since the choragus of a boys' chorus must be over 40 years of age. He also appoints chorigi for the festival at Delos, and chiefs of the mission for the 30-oar boat which conveys the youths thither. He also superintends sacred processions, both that in honor of Asclepius, when the initiated keep house, and that of the great Dionysia, the latter in conjunction with the superintendence of that festival. These officers, 10 in number, were formerly elected by open vote in the assembly, and used to provide for the expenses of the procession out of their private means. But now one is elected by lot from each tribe, and the state contributes 100 minas for the expenses. The archon also superintends the procession at the Thargelia, and that in honor of Zeus the Saviour. He also manages the contests at the Dionysia and the Thargelia. These, then, are the festivals which he superintends. The suits and indictments which come before him, and which he, after a preliminary inquiry, brings up before the law courts, are as follows. Injury to parents. For bringing these accusations, the prosecutor cannot suffer any penalty. Injury to orphans. These actions lie against their guardians. Injury to a ward of state. These lie against their guardians or their husbands. Injury to an orphan's estate. These two lie against the guardians. Mental derangement, where a party charges another with destroying his own property through unsoundness of mind. For appointment of liquidators, where a party refuses to divide property in which others have a share. For constituting a wardship. For determining between rival claims to a wardship. For granting inspection of property to which another party lays claim, and for determining disputes as to inheritances and wards of state. The archon also has the care of orphans and wards of state, and of women who, on the death of their husbands, declare themselves to be with child, and he has power to inflict a fine on those who offend against the persons under his charge, or to bring the case before the law courts. He also leases out the houses of orphans and wards of state until they reach the age of 14, and takes mortgages on them. And if the guardians fail to provide the necessary food for the children under their charge, he exacts it from them. Such are the duties of the archon. Chapter 57. The king, in the first place, superintends the mysteries, in conjunction with the superintendence of mysteries. The latter are elected in the assembly by open vote, 2 from the general body of Athenians, 1 from the Eumolpidae, and 1 from the Charices. Next, he superintends the Lenaean Dionysia, which consists of a procession and a contest. The procession is ordered by the king and the superintendents in conjunction, but the contest is managed by the king alone. He also manages all the contests of the torch race, and, to speak broadly, he administers all the ancestral sacrifices. Indictments for impiety come before him, or any disputes between parties concerning priestly rights. And he also determines all controversies concerning the privileges of the ancient families and the priests. All actions for homicide come before him, and it is he that makes the proclamation requiring polluted persons to keep away from sacred ceremonies. Actions for homicide and wounding are heard, if the homicide or wounding be willful, in the Areopagus. So also in cases of killing by poison and of arson. These are the only cases heard by that council. Cases of unintentional homicide, or of intent to kill, or of killing a slave, or a resident alien, or a foreigner, are heard by the court of Palladium. When the homicide is acknowledged, but legal justification is pleaded, as when a man takes an adulterer in the act, or kills another by mistaken battle, or in an athletic contest, the prisoner is tried in the court of Delphinium. If a man who is in banishment for a homicide which admits of reconciliation incurs a further charge of killing or wounding, He is tried in Phreato, and he makes his defense from a boat moored near the shore. All these cases, except those which are heard in the Areopagus, are tried by the Ephetae on whom the lot falls. The king introduces them, and the hearing is held, and in the open air. Whenever the king hears a case, he takes off his crown. The person who is subject to a charge of homicide is at all other times excluded from the temples, nor is he even allowed to enter the marketplace. But on the occasion of his trial he enters the temple and makes his defense. If the actual offender is unknown, the writ runs against the doer of the deed. The king and the tribe kings also hear the cases in which the guilt rests on inanimate objects and the lower animals. Chapter 58. The polemarch performs the sacrifices to Artemis the huntress and to Enyalios, and arranges the contest at the funeral of those who have fallen in war, and makes offerings to the memory of Harmodius and Aristogiton. Of private actions, those come before him in which resident aliens, both ordinary and privileged, and agents of foreign states are concerned. It is his duty to receive these cases and divide them into 10 parts, and assign to each tribe the part which comes to it by lot. After which the magistrates who introduce cases for the tribe hand them over to the arbitrators. The polemarch, however, brings up in person cases in which an alien is charged with deserting his patron, or neglecting to provide himself with one, and also of inheritances and wards of state where aliens are concerned. And in fact, generally, whatever the Archon does for citizens, the polemarch does for aliens. Chapter 59. The Thesmothetae, in the first place, have the power of prescribing on what days the law courts are to sit, and next of assigning them to the several magistrates, for the latter must follow the arrangement which the Thesmothetae assign. Moreover, they introduce impeachments before the assembly, and bring up all votes for removal from office, challenges of a magistrate's conduct before the assembly, indictments for illegal proposals, or for proposing a law which is contrary to the interests of the state, complaints against prodri or their president for their conduct in office, and the accounts presented by the generals. All indictments also come before them in which a deposit has to be made by the prosecutor, namely, indictments for concealment of foreign origin, for corrupt evasion of foreign origin, when a man escapes the disqualification by bribery, for blackmailing accusations, bribery, false entry of another as a state debtor, false testimony to the service of a summons, conspiracy to enter as a state debtor, corrupt removal from the list of debtors, and adultery. They also bring up the examinations of all magistrates, and the rejections by the demes, and the condemnations by the council. Moreover, they bring up certain private suits in cases of merchandise and mines, or where a slave has slandered a free man. It is they also who cast lots to assign the courts to the various magistrates, whether for private or public cases. They ratify agreements with foreign states to regulate the decision of commercial disputes, and bring up the cases which arise out of such agreements, and they also bring up cases of perjury from the Areopagus. The casting of lots for the jurors is conducted by all the 9 archons, with the clerk to the Thesmothetae as the 10th, each performing the duty for his own tribe. Such are the duties of the 9 archons. Chapter 60. There are also 10 commissioners of games, Athlothetae, elected by lot, 1 from each tribe. These officers, after passing an examination, serve for 4 years, and they manage the Panathenaic procession, the contest in music, and that in gymnastic, and the horse race. They also, in conjunction with the council, see to the making of the robe of Athena, and the vases, and they present the oil to the athletes. This oil is collected from the sacred olives. The archon requisitions it from the owners of the farms on which the sacred olives grow, to the amount of 3/4 of a pint from each plant. Formerly the state used to sell the fruit itself, and if anyone dug up or broke down one of the sacred olives, he was tried by the council of Areopagus, and if he was condemned, the penalty was death. Since, however, the oil has been paid by the owner of the farm, the procedure has lapsed, though the law remains, and the oil is a state charge upon the property instead of being taken from the individual plants. When, then, the archon has collected the oil for his year of office, he hands it over to the treasurers to preserve in the Acropolis, and he may not take his seat in the Areopagus until he has paid over to the treasurers the full amount. The treasurers keep it in the Acropolis until the Panathenaea, when they measure it out to the commissioners of games, and they again to the victorious competitors. The prizes for the victors in the musical contest consist of silver and gold, for the victors in manly vigor of shields, and for the victors in the gymnastic contest and the horse race of oil. Chapter 61. All officers connected with military service are elected by open vote. In the first place, 10 generals, strategi, who were formerly elected, 1 from each tribe, but now are chosen from the whole mass of citizens. Their duties are assigned to them by open vote. 1 is appointed to command the heavy infantry, and leads them if they go out to war. 1 to the defense of the country, who remains on the defensive, and fights if there is war within the borders of the country. 2 to Piraeus, 1 of whom is assigned to Munichia, and 1 to the south shore, and these have charge of the defense and of everything in Piraeus, and 1 to superintend the Simorias, who nominates the triarchs, and arranges exchanges of properties for them, and brings up actions to decide on rival claims in connection with them. The rest are dispatched to whatever business may be on hand at the moment. The appointment of these officers is submitted for confirmation in each prytany when the question is put whether they are considered to be doing their duty. If any officer is rejected on this vote, he is tried in the law court, and if he is found guilty, the people decide what punishment or fine shall be inflicted on him. But if he is acquitted, he holds office for the rest of his term. The generals have full power, when on active service, to arrest anyone for insubordination, or to expel him publicly, or to inflict a fine. The latter is, however, unusual. There are also 10 taxiarchs, 1 from each tribe, elected by open vote, and each commands his own tribesmen, and appoints captains of companies, locagi. There are also 2 hipparchs, elected by open vote from the whole mass of the citizens, who command the cavalry, each taking 5 tribes. They have the same powers as the generals have in respect of the infantry, and their appointments are also subject to confirmation. There are also phylarchs elected by open vote, 1 from each tribe, to command the cavalry, as the taxiarchs do the infantry. There is also a hipparch for Lemnos, elected by open vote, who has charge of the cavalry in Lemnos. There is also a treasurer of the Perilos, and another of the Ammonius, similarly elected. Chapter 62. Of the magistrates elected by lot, in former times some, including the 9 archons, were elected out of the tribe as a whole, while others, namely those who are now elected in the Theseum, were apportioned among the demes. But since the demes used to sell the elections, these magistrates, too, are now elected from the whole tribe, except the members of the council and the guards of the dockyards, who are still left to the demes. Pay is received for the following services. First, the members of the assembly receive a drachma for the ordinary meetings, and 9 obols for the sovereign meeting. Then the jurors at the law courts receive 3 obols, and the members of the council 5 obols. The prytanes receive an allowance of an obol for their maintenance. The 9 archons receive 4 obols apiece for maintenance, and also keep a herald and a flute player, and the archon for Salamis receives a drachma a day. The commissioners for games dine in the Prytaneum during the month of Hecatombeon, in which the Panathenaic festival takes place, from the 14th day onwards. The Amphictyonic deputies to Delos receive a drachma a day from the exchequer of Delos. Also, all magistrates sent to Samos, Skyros, Lemnos, or Imbros receive an allowance for their maintenance. The military offices may be held any number of times, but none of the others more than once, except the membership of the council, which may be held twice. Chapter 63. The juries for the law courts are chosen by lot by the 9 archons, each for their own tribe, and by the clerk to the Thesmothetae for the 10th. There are 10 entrances into the courts, 1 for each tribe, 20 rooms in which the lots are drawn, 2 for each tribe, 100 chests, 10 for each tribe, 10 other chests, in which are placed the tickets of the jurors on whom the lot falls, and 2 vases. Further, staves, equal in number to the jurors required, are placed by the side of each entrance, and counters are put into 1 vase, equal in number to the staves. These are inscribed with letters of the alphabet, beginning with the 11th, lambda, equal in number to the courts which require to be filled. All persons above 30 years of age are qualified to serve as jurors, provided they are not debtors to the state and have not lost their civil rights. If any unqualified person serves as juror, an information is laid against him, and he is brought before the court, and if he is convicted, the jurors assess the punishment or fine which they consider him to deserve. If he is condemned to a money fine, he must be imprisoned until he has paid up both the original debt, on account of which the information was laid against him, and also the fine which the court has imposed upon him. Each juror has a ticket of boxwood, on which is inscribed his name, with the name of his father and his deme, and 1 of the letters of the alphabet up to kappa. For the jurors in their several tribes are divided into 10 sections, with approximately an equal number in each letter. When the Thesmothetes has decided by lot which letters are required to attend at the courts, the servant puts up above each court the letter which has been assigned to it by the lot. Footnote: the remainder of the treatise, which was written on a separate piece of papyrus, exists only in a mutilated and disfigured condition, which makes continuous decipherment hopeless, though much has been done, especially by Blas, to restore it and indicate its general tenor. It is entirely occupied with the description of the procedure in the law courts, and ends somewhat abruptly. The concluding lines are quite legible, with the statement that when the business of the day is finished, the jurors receive the pay which is due to them for their services. End of chapter 63, and end of The Constitution of Athens, by Aristotle, translated by Sir Frederick Kenyon. Recording by Geoffrey Edwards. Proof listened by Patty Cunningham. Meta-coordinated by Mary Ann Spiegel. Recording in memory of